Today on Hebrew Grammar Help, I am continuing my series on regular verb conjugations with PL verbs. Welcome back to Hebrew Grammar Help. I'm Sapir, and today I'll be talking about the conjugations for PL verbs in the past, the present, the future, and the imperative mood, as well as the infinitive and Shempeula forms. If you haven't watched the videos on PL verbs, that's okay. You do not need to know the PL verbs before learning the PL verbs. Most students do learn PL first, but that's not mandatory. That's just, I think, because I think PL is the biggest group of verbs, and that's why we learn it first. But it will help you to know kind of the basics of verbs. And so if you don't know what a shoresh is, or a binyan, or a gizra, you might want to watch my videos G7, G8, G9, and G11 that kind of outline the basics of verbs and everything you need to know about verbs, or just look them up yourself somewhere else. But I will be using these terms and not defining them. So the binyan I'm talking about today is binyan PL, and these will be the regular conjugations of binyan PL. So gizrat hashlemim. And whenever we learn a binyan like this, we basically learn the templates. There are templates for all of the different forms, and then we practice by putting one verb into the template so that we can get a sense of what it sounds like. All right, so this is the infinitive template, and infinitive is the verb that in English we say to do something. So to speak, to teach, to tell, verbs like that. So it's not actually like tied to a person or a tense or anything like that. It's when we use it in a sentence, it almost always has to be after another verb, like I want to do something, or I have to do something, right? We have another verb first, and then we have the to version of a verb. And so looking at this template, we see a lamed with a shwa, and all of the infinitives in Hebrew start with a lamed. So we have a lamed with a shwa, and then we have our three letters here, and those are just basically the shoresh letters, and the first two letters have vowels underneath them. The first one has a patach, the second one has a tzere. And so the vowel pattern for these PL verbs is le, a, e. And you see that this second shoresh letter has also a dagesh. Now this dagesh is different from the dagesh that was in the PL templates. I'll just mention that there are two different kinds of dagesh. There's a hardening dagesh, and then there is a doubling dagesh. The hardening dagesh can only go on a begad kafat letter, which is bet, gimel, dalid, kaf, pei, taf. Those are the begad kafat letters. A doubling dagesh can go on any letter that is not a guttural. And so what this means is that when you have a template that has a dagesh somewhere in the template, that dagesh is going to be deleted if the letter that is in there, the shoresh letter, doesn't fit the requirements for that particular dagesh. So let's take a shoresh like lamed mem dalid, which means like study. It has to do with studying. The PL template for infinitive includes a hardening dagesh on the middle letter of the shoresh. The middle letter of the shoresh is a mem, so it is not a begad kafat letter. So that hardening dagesh is going to be deleted when we want to write li lemod. But in PL, the infinitive template, in the exact same position, the second letter has now a doubling dagesh. And so a doubling dagesh can go on a mem because a mem is not a guttural letter. And so we leave that doubling dagesh there. Anyway, so the reason I tell you about the dagesh is not, I'm fond of saying we're adults, we don't write with nikud. But we do need to remember there are three letters that sound different if they have a dagesh in them or not. Those three letters are bet, kaf, and pei. And so in some senses, we do need to know when there's a dagesh in a template and when there isn't. I digress. So let's get a little practice putting shorashim into this template. So my favorite word to practice PL with is ledaber. That means to speak. It means to speak a language, or you can use it for speaking with a person. And so it's dalet bet resh is its shoresh, and you just stick those letters into the template and you get ledaber. Okay, and so then we also can put in here bet resh kaf and have levarech, and that means to bless. Now, a couple of things I noticed here. First of all, the dagesh gets deleted before the resh. Resh sometimes acts like a guttural letter and sometimes not. And in this case, it does because the dagesh is deleted. Another thing I noticed is that the vowel changed under the first letter. It's no longer a patach, now it's a kamatz. So I did some investigating, and it turns out that the patach turns into a kamatz only if that second letter of the shoresh is a resh, not any other of the other guttural letters, and it doesn't matter what that first letter is. So for some reason, that resh causes that patach to turn into a kamatz. But again, modern Hebrew speakers do not really care too much about this, because in most dialects of modern Hebrew, the kamatz and the patach sound exactly alike. All right, onwards and upwards. Let's talk about present tense. Remember, the present tense has 4 templates because the verbs have different forms based on gender and number, but not person. So I speak, you speak, and he speaks are all going to have the same verb form as long as the I, the you, and the he are the same gender, the masculine. All right, so one of the main features of present tense PL verbs is that it's got this mem prefix with a schwa under it. And then the first shoresh letter of all of the forms is also going to have a patach. And they also all have a doubling dagesh on that middle shoresh letter, on the second shoresh letter. So that's what they all have in common. But after that dagesh on that second shoresh letter, things change based on the gender and the number of the subject. So for masculine singular, that second shoresh letter is just going to get a tsere. And then nothing else. And then you put the third shoresh letter, and then there's nothing else. The feminine singular, that second shoresh letter is going to have a segel, and so is the third shoresh letter. And then they're going to have a taf suffix at the end. So for masculine plural, that second shoresh letter is going to have a schwa, and the third shoresh letter is going to have a hirik, and then we're going to have a yud and a mem sofit suffix, and it's going to sound like im. And then for feminine plural, that second shoresh letter is again going to have a schwa, And after the third shoresh letter, we're going to have a chola maleh, which is a vav with the dot up top, and then a taf. And that ending sounds like ot. Let's put in our favorite shoresh, dalet bet resh. And we have medaber, medaberet, medabrim, medabrot. And remember, medaberet, because of these two sickles, you're going to have the stress on the second to last syllable. All right, moving on to past tense. So remember that the past tense sounds very much like the vowels of the name of the shoresh. And that's because the shoresh was named after the past tense. So the name PL tells you that the vowels, at least on the third person singular masculine, are going to be an E and an E. So here's our set of templates for past tense. But I want to make it clear that I actually wrote this myself in Ktiv Maleh, because Pealim.com always writes it in Ktiv Chaser, and I didn't want to go through it twice. So all I did to make this Ktiv Maleh is add a yud after the first shoresh letter. So if you were to read it in the Tanakh or read anything that's pre-modern Hebrew, you're not going to see this yod here. But it's really, really important that we write the yod and that we, recognize that the yod is an indication of PL, because that yod, when we're writing or reading without nikud, that yod is the only thing that separates a pa'al verb from a PL verb in the past tense. And so, it's the difference between I taught Hebrew versus I learned Hebrew. It's a big difference. So before I get started, I'm going to mention the two I am not sure how to say the plural of dagesh in Hebrew. I only ever hear it in singular. So the two dageshes are two different ones. This first one on the first shoresh letter is a hardening dagesh, and so it's only going to be on a begad kfat letter. The second one that is on the second shoresh letter is a doubling dagesh, so it's going to be on any letter that is not a guttural. But either way, in modern Hebrew, they're going to have the same effect on the sounds of the word. They're only going to affect a bet, a kaf, or a pei. Having the dagesh there, of course, is going to make them sound like their plosive sound, a B, a K sound, or a P sound. All right, and then the first letter always has a chirik under it, and then it's always followed by this yod. Now, from here on out, everything changes by person. First and second person, the second shoresh letter is going to have a patach. The third shoresh letter is going to have a shwa, and then they're going to have their correct ending that matches the subject. Third person, of course, if it's singular masculine, it's going to have that sere. If it's third person singular feminine, the second letter is going to have a shwa, and the third letter is going to have a kamatz, and then there's going to be a hey after it. And then for third person plural, that second shoresh letter is again going to have a shwa, and then the third shoresh letter is going to be followed by a shuruk, a vav with the dot in its belly. So let's practice with our favorite verb, ledaber. We have dibarti, dibarta, dibart, diber, dibra, dibarnu, dibartem, dibarten, dibru. All right, moving on to future tense. Remember, future in all of the binyanim, future tense rhymes with the infinitive. And whatever vowel is on the lamed of the infinitive, it almost always, that same vowel ends up on the prefix of the future tense. So PL verbs sound like le, a, e, and so the future is going to be like te, a, e, ye, a, e. These are the vowel patterns of the future tense. So we do have a little bit of a problem here with the first person singular because its prefix is an aleph. It's really difficult to say an aleph with a schwa. And so what ends up happening is that it gets a chataf patach instead of the schwa. So it sounds like a, e. And so that's the vowel pattern for the first person singular. So whenever there's also a suffix, what's going to happen is that tzere that's on the second shoresh letter is going to reduce to a schwa. And so let's stick a shoresh in there and go through the forms. So our favorite shoresh is dalet bet resh. We have adaber, tedaber, tedabri, yedaber, tedaber. Remember the he form, the third person singular feminine, always matches the ata form, the second person singular masculine. And for plural, we have nedaber, tedabru, and yedabru. Okay, and now for imperative. Remember, this is the way to make a command or a request. And so the imperative is formed by using the future and then just taking off the prefix. So these are always going to be second person. So it's going to be second person masculine, second person feminine, or second person plural. And what you're just going to do is you're going to take off that te prefix, and then you've got your verb form. The only thing that you have to be careful of is if there is a bagat kafat letter at the very beginning, it doesn't have a dagesh in the future, but it will have to have a dagesh in the command form because now it is the first letter of the word. And so you can't really tell with ledaber because even though the dalet is a bagat kafat letter, you don't really hear the difference. So the future of ledaber for the three second person forms is going to be tedaber, tedabri, and tedabru. And so for the imperative, it's just going to be daber, dabri, dabru. So you really don't hear a difference in that dalet, right? But think about the verb levarech, which again means to bless. And so the future forms are tevarech, tevarchi, tevarchu. And so it's the bet sounds like a V because it does not have a dagesh. But when you make it a command, you say barech, barchi, barchu. Okay, and the last template is the shem pe'ula, the verbal noun. What it is that you're just basically making a noun out of a verb. And so each binyan has a specific way to make the noun out of the verb. And so the regular way for PL verbs is you've got that first shoresh letter. It's going to have a hardening dagesh in it, and then a chirik underneath. And now, when we're writing in katif maleh, or when we're writing without nikud, we are going to put a yod after that first shoresh letter. Then we're going to put the second shoresh letter, and then a shuruk, which is a vav that has the dot in the belly, and then the third shoresh letter. And so it's going to have an iu vowel pattern. So using our favorite verb that we've been using all along. We've got dibour, dibour. And that means like speech or speaking. Okay, folks, that is it. You have gone through another Sapir video. Now you know everything you need to know about regular PL verbs. Okay, so if you have any questions or feedback, please leave it in the comments and I will do my best to get back to you. Hit like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe, and press the notification bell if you want to see more. Lehitraot, Papa Ama Ba'a. See you next time.